What are you doing here? You were told not to come. Those words hit me like a gust of cold wind, slicing through the warmth of what should have been a celebration. My heart pounded, not from surprise, but from the sting of hearing them said aloud, in front of 300 guests, with a string quartet playing softly behind us and champagne flutes clinking in the distance. I smiled, not because I wasn't hurt, but because I had planned for this. Standing there in the grand foyer of the Oakfield Manor, I looked at my son's bride, the same woman I had spent the last 6 months trying to protect him from. Her perfect hair, flawless smile, and ivory gown couldn't cover the truth I now held in my hand. "I'll go," I said calmly. "But first, I'd like to introduce you to someone." And when she turned and saw the man standing beside me, her face drained of all color. That was the moment everything started to unravel. But to understand how we got here, let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Nancy Holloway. I'm 67 years old, a retired school teacher, and a mother of one, my son Jacob. His father, Harold, passed away 3 years ago. Since then it's just been the two of us. And for a time that was enough. Then Jacob met Elise. She was everything you'd expect a charming stranger to be. Polite, attentive, beautiful in that effortless way. She worked as a physical therapist, said she loved helping people. She talked about growing up in Colorado, about moving around a lot, about being raised by her grandmother. I tried to believe her. I really did. Jacob was happy. Happier than I'd seen him in years. After months of grief and silence, he smiled again. He made plans. He came home one night beaming, holding out a ring. "Mom, I'm proposing," he said. "She's the one." I swallowed my doubts. Who was I to question love? When he told me they wanted a wedding at Oakfield Manor, the most exclusive venue in all of Westbridge, I didn't blink. I emptied Harold's life insurance. I cashed out an old savings bond. I even took a reverse mortgage on my house. Every time I hesitated, Elise would brush it off with a tearful thank you or a soft, "You're like the mom I never had." I paid for the dress. $11,000. The flowers. White tulips shipped from Holland. The catering, the decor, the custom calligraphy invitations. Elise's family, she said, had disapproved of Jacob and refused to help with the wedding. "They think I'm marrying below my station," she whispered once, eyes glistening. "But I don't care. I love him." She was good. Too good. First it was little things. She never let me see the guest list. She always handled payments in cash, claiming she didn't trust digital banking. She didn't have a Facebook, no visible online presence, but she said she was just a private person. Still, Jacob loved her. And I loved Jacob. So I stayed quiet. Until one night changed everything. I had gone to their apartment to drop off monogrammed wedding favors, tiny silver spoons with their initials engraved. Jacob wasn't home yet. Elise answered the door, looked surprised, but let me in. "You can leave them on the kitchen counter," she said before disappearing into the bedroom. Then I heard it. Her voice low, angry, sharp. "I told you not to call this number, Marcus." "Yes, the wedding is still on." "No, he has no idea. After we're married, I'll have full access. Stop pushing for more. We agreed on 30%. That's the deal." I froze. My heart thudded in my chest. No, his mom doesn't suspect a thing. She's actually helping fund everything. We're already over 40K in. After the wedding, she'll probably help with the house. This one's worth at least 200K easy. She laughed. I backed away slowly. My hands were shaking. I nearly dropped the box of favors. Somehow I made it to my car. Drove 3 blocks before I had to pull over and catch my breath. I sat there for nearly an hour trying to make sense of what I just heard. The perfect woman my son was about to marry was a fraud. And he was the target. That night I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit by and let Jacob walk into a trap. But I couldn't just tell him, not yet. Elise had him wrapped around her finger, and any warning would sound like jealousy or control. I needed proof. The next morning I found myself sitting across from a woman named Grace Hartley, a former detective who now worked private fraud cases. I found her online after a long night of reading horror stories about financial scams disguised as romance. "I know what you're thinking," I said. "It sounds crazy, but I know what I heard." Grace listened carefully, asked the right questions. When I mentioned the name Marcus, she raised an eyebrow. You said she goes by Elise? Yes, Elise Warner. Let's find out who she really is, she said, scribbling on a notepad. A week later, Grace called me. Nancy, she said, her tone grim. You're going to want to sit down. Her real name was Charlotte Rivers. She had changed her identity 4 times in the last 6 years. Arrested twice for fraud. Never convicted. Always moved states before trials. She had a pattern. Meet a man, isolate him from his family, marry quickly, clean out his accounts within a year, then disappear. And Marcus? Her partner. Sometimes her boyfriend, sometimes just her business associate. He's helped her pull off at least 3 similar scams. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. I need to talk to him, I said. Are you sure? Yes. If there's anyone who wants to stop her as badly as I do, it's the man she double-crossed. Grace found him within 2 days. He was living in Cincinnati working odd jobs. I called him. I expected hostility. Instead, I got silence. Then a deep, tired sigh. She's getting married again, he asked. Unreal. She's about to ruin my son's life, I said. But you could help stop her. We spoke for nearly an hour. I told him everything I knew, and then I made a bold suggestion. I want you to come to the wedding. He didn't respond right away. Then, you want me to crash it? No, I said. I want you to save it. Marcus arrived in town 2 days before the wedding. He didn't look like the kind of man you'd expect to bring down a con artist. Quiet, a little weathered, sharp eyes. Wore a baseball cap low on his forehead and carried a duffel bag like he'd seen more road than rest. We met in the parking lot of a quiet diner just off Route 17. I don't want money, he said before I could even sit down. I want closure. She ruined years of my life. Then we want the same thing, I replied. To make sure she never does this again. He nodded. Over greasy coffee and scrambled eggs, we laid out the plan. He wouldn't just show up. He would show up when she least expected him. During the ceremony. In front of the guests. With evidence. Grace had prepared a folder, photos, arrest records, bank accounts under different names. All neatly compiled and ready to deliver. But that wasn't all. Will your son believe it? Marcus asked. I hesitated. He might not. Not right away. But the truth in front of 100 people. That's hard to explain away. Marcus agreed to meet me outside Oakfield Manor an hour before the ceremony. I would give him the signal when it was time. The next 2 days passed in slow motion. Every time I saw Jacob, he looked at me with warmth, but a bit of distance. Elise had already sown doubt in his mind. The woman he was about to marry had him convinced that his mother didn't support their love. I played the role. I smiled. I stayed quiet. I let Elise think she'd won. And while I played nice, I made a few quiet calls of my own. The photographer. The caterer. The string quartet. I told them the bride's family had decided to cover all remaining balances. They'll be using a different number going forward, I said sweetly. Here's the updated contact info. The number, of course, went straight to voicemail. One by one, I removed my payment method from every invoice. Elise wouldn't notice until it was too late. And by then, she'd have much bigger problems. The night before the wedding, Jacob called me. He sounded tired, unsure. Mom, Elise feels like you've been distant. Are you okay with everything? I want you to be happy, sweetheart, I said. That's all I care about. Even if it means letting go a little? I smiled to myself. Even then. He thanked me. Said he loved me. That part still felt real. The next morning, Oakfield Manor looked like a page from a luxury magazine. White chairs lined the garden path. Petals were scattered like snowfall. The air smelled like lavender and vanilla. Guests arrived in waves, friends, co-workers, extended family. Elise moved through the crowd like a starlet, smiling and glowing. She wore the pearl necklace I'd loaned her, the one passed down from my grandmother. A family heirloom. It looked like a trophy on her neck. I wasn't invited to the bridal suite. I wasn't asked to walk Jacob down the aisle. I wasn't even on the official seating chart. But I was there. And I had a plan. An hour before the ceremony, I slipped out to the edge of the parking lot. Marcus stood beside a black SUV, folder in hand, nerves visible. You sure about this? He asked. Yes, I said. Just wait for my signal. Back inside, the music started. The guests were seated. The minister stood beneath the floral arch. Jacob took his place, fidgeting with his tie. Then came the moment. Elise began her walk down the aisle. The crowd stood. She smiled at Jacob like nothing could touch her. I stepped out from my place in the back and walked calmly to the front row. Elise's smile faltered. Just slightly. When she reached the altar, the minister began his welcome. And then I spoke. "Excuse me." Every head turned. "I know I wasn't invited," I said, loud enough for the entire garden to hear. But I couldn't let this continue. Elise's face froze. "Before you make any promises," I continued, "I think you should meet someone." I turned and gestured to the edge of the aisle. Marcus stepped forward. He looked calm, collected, deadly quiet. Elise took one look at him and stumbled back. "Charlotte," he said, holding up the folder. "Remember me?" Gasps. Whispers. Elise tried to recover. "I don't know this man." "That's funny," Marcus replied, opening the folder. "Because I have texts, photos, bank statements. All with your name, your real name." The minister stepped aside. Jacob looked between them, confusion turning to panic. "What is this?" he asked. "Ask her," Marcus said, stepping back. Elise turned to Jacob, her voice suddenly high-pitched and desperate. "He's lying. He's obsessed with me. He's trying to ruin our wedding." But Jacob didn't speak. He just stared. The guests looked stunned. A few pulled out their phones. The air buzzed with tension. Marcus placed the folder on the pedestal next to the minister. "You can read it yourself. Everything's in there." Elise tried to lunge for it, but Jacob stepped between them. "Don't," he said quietly. The silence that followed was the kind you only hear once in a lifetime, the kind that breaks something open. I stepped forward. "I trusted you," I said to Elise. "I gave you everything. And you were planning to steal from us." Tears welled in her eyes. "Jacob, please. You can't believe this." He didn't answer. Then he looked at me. "Is this true?" he asked. I nodded. "Every word." He picked up the folder and started to flip through the pages. Elise reached for his arm, but he pulled away. And then she ran. Just turned and bolted down the aisle, heels snapping against the stones, veil flying behind her like a flag of surrender. No one followed. Jacob stood there, silent, holding the proof in one hand and a broken heart in the other. The silence after Elise ran was unbearable. No music. No laughter. Just the faint sound of the wind shifting through $2,000 worth of imported tulip petals. The minister looked to Jacob, unsure. A few guests stood awkwardly, whispering to each other. Someone in the back cleared their throat. I stepped forward and gently took the folder from Jacob's hand. "Let's give everyone a moment," I said to the minister. He nodded and led the crowd toward the refreshments. Jacob remained frozen in place, staring at the stone pathway where Elise had vanished. "Jacob," I said softly, "come sit down." He looked at me, eyes red and unfocused, then followed me to the nearest bench. We sat in silence for a full minute. Then he spoke. "How long have you known?" I didn't lie. 2 weeks. He blinked slowly. "You should have told me." I wanted to. But I also knew you wouldn't believe me, not if it came from me alone. He rubbed his eyes. "You were right. I wasn't trying to win. I was trying to save you." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Eventually, the guests began to leave. Some approached quietly to offer hugs or sympathy. Others just nodded and walked to their cars. The photographer snapped one final photo of the empty altar before packing up. Grace appeared near the exit, giving me a quick nod of acknowledgement. Her work was done. Marcus had already gone. No dramatics. No extra words. He had delivered his truth and disappeared into the background, where men like him usually live after being used and discarded. The wedding was over. But the cleanup had only just begun. The following week was a blur. The Oakfield Manor manager called. The venue hadn't been paid in full. Neither had the florist, the caterer, or the band. "I'm afraid we'll have to pursue legal options if the balance isn't settled," she said. I had been ready for that. "Elise Warner was the listed party for those payments," I said. "Her contact information is in your system." I suggest you start there. I hung up before she could argue. Jacob moved back in with me for a while. He didn't talk much, but I didn't push. Sometimes healing doesn't need advice. Just space. We settled into a quiet rhythm. I made breakfast. He read the paper. We watched game shows we never liked just to fill the noise. It wasn't joyful, but it was familiar. One afternoon he asked, "Do you still have that photo album?" I knew which one he meant. I pulled it from the hall closet, thick, dusty, bound in green velvet. He flipped through the pages silently. Childhood birthdays, Halloween costumes, school plays. Photos of Harold holding him up to pick apples. Me standing behind him on his first day of school, my hands on his shoulders. "That day," Jacob said quietly. "The day we took this. I remember you packed my lunch with a note inside." "I did that every Monday," I said with a soft smile. "You always looked forward to the surprise." He chuckled once, dry but real. "She never asked about those years." "Elise." He nodded. "She didn't want to know. Just wanted to move fast. Bigger house, faster plans." "She was always moving toward the exit," I said. "Even before she walked down the aisle." He closed the album and stared at it. I ignored so many signs. "You trusted her," I said gently. "That's not a weakness." "I feel like a fool." "No," I said. "She just picked the wrong mother to underestimate." 2 weeks after the wedding, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Slanted. Careful. Delicate. "Nancy, you ruined the best thing that ever happened to your son. He loved me. And we were going to be happy until you got involved. I should have known you'd never let him go. You were never going to let him have a life without your control. But you won't get the last word. You don't know everything. And someday when he realizes what you cost him, don't expect him to come back. Elise." I folded the letter without finishing the last paragraph. Somewhere in another state, another town, Elise Charlotte was probably changing her name again, plotting her next move. But I had what she didn't. My son back, the truth on my side, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd never scam another dollar out of this family. I burned the letter in the fireplace that night. Watched it curl into ash like the last trace of her power. A few days later, Jacob came into the kitchen holding a small box. "I found this in her drawer," he said. Inside was the pearl necklace, my grandmother's heirloom. Elise had never returned it. She'd packed in a rush, leaving only what wasn't easily flipped for cash. I took it gently in my hands. I thought it was gone. She never wore it except at the wedding rehearsal. Said it clashed with the dress. I held it up to the light. The pearls had dulled slightly, but they were still mine. Still part of my story. "I want you to keep it," Jacob said. "For good this time." I nodded. It wasn't about the necklace. It was about everything it had survived. Summer turned to early autumn. The tulips Elise had imported for the wedding had long since withered, swept away with the tablecloths and tulle. But pieces of that day still lingered, like dust in corners you can't quite reach. Jacob returned to work slowly. He'd taken a leave of absence after everything fell apart. His company gave him time and space for which I was grateful. And when he came home each night, I noticed how much lighter his step had become. He had stopped talking about Elise. That, in itself, said more than any words. One Saturday morning, while I was watering the garden, he came outside carrying 2 mugs of coffee. "I made yours just the way you like it," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "How do you know how I like it?" He smirked. "I do listen sometimes." It was a small thing, but it meant the world. We sat on the porch, steam curling from our cups, and for the first time in weeks he asked me how I was. "I'm okay," I said. He gave me a look. "All right," I amended. "I'm still angry. Not at you. Just at everything." "I know the feeling," he said quietly. We didn't need to say more. That moment, 2 cups of coffee, 1 long pause, and a quiet breeze was enough. Later that week I found something else she left behind. A silver compact tucked inside the bathroom cabinet. Expensive. Embossed. The initials EW. Engraved on the back. I held it for a long moment before dropping it in the trash. But part of me still wondered, where did it all start for her? When did she learn to lie so easily? That thought haunted me, not because I pitied her, but because I'd come so close to letting her into our family forever. If I hadn't heard that phone call, if I hadn't called Grace, we would have been just another name in a trail of others who never saw her coming. About a month after the wedding, that wasn't Grace called me. I just wanted to let you know, she said. Marcus reached out. He said thank you. For what? For giving him a chance to close that chapter. He's doing better now. Got a steady job again. Signed up for night classes. I didn't know what to say. He said he didn't think he'd ever get past what she did to him, she added. But watching her run this time, it gave him peace. I smiled. Good. He deserved it. By the way, Grace said, I've never seen a takedown that organized. You missed your calling, Nancy. I laughed. You mean I shouldn't have wasted my life teaching 8th graders how to diagram sentences? You've got instincts, she said. Sharp ones. I just wanted to protect my son. You did more than that, Grace said. You protected the truth. That night, I stood in front of the mirror in my bedroom, the one Harold had hung for me 30 years ago. I looked older. I was older. But I also saw something else in my reflection: resolve. Not revenge. Not even pride. Just quiet, fierce resolve. I'd been dismissed. I'd been lied to. I'd been humiliated at the wedding I paid for. But in the end, I didn't lose. By October, Jacob had found his rhythm again. He joined a fitness class, started volunteering once a week at the library, and even reconnected with a few old friends Elise had slowly pulled him away from. One evening, he came home later than usual. You okay? I asked as he set down his keys. He looked sheepish. I had coffee with someone. I raised an eyebrow. A someone. He smiled. Her name's Rachel. She's not like Elise. She'd better not be. He laughed, and for the first time since the wreckage, I saw his face fully light up. I'm not rushing into anything, he added quickly. I just wanted you to know. I appreciate that. And if you ever get a bad feeling, he said, tell me. No hesitation. I looked at him for a moment, then nodded. Deal. Weeks passed. I cleaned out the last box of wedding leftovers, unused decorations, duplicate gifts, receipts. I returned what I could, donated the rest. But I kept one thing. The small framed sign that was supposed to sit on the welcome table. It read, Today is the start of forever. Irony aside, I liked it. So I hung it in the laundry room. Let it remind me that even forever sometimes gets interrupted. And that's okay. It was a chilly November afternoon when the letter arrived. Not a bill. Not an advertisement. An envelope. Plain. No return address. My name written in neat, unfamiliar script. Inside a single page. Typed. Mrs. Holloway. You don't know me. But I knew her. Charlotte. Elise. Whatever name she's using now. I was engaged to her 3 years ago in Des Moines. She vanished 3 weeks before our wedding. Took everything she could. Left a mess I spent months cleaning up. Someone sent me a video link last week. It was from a guest at your son's wedding. I saw what you did. How you stopped her. I just wanted to say thank you. You saved someone else from becoming a ghost. Maybe even saved your son's life. You're the first person I've seen fight back and win. She's gone underground again. But because of you, there are people watching now. She's not invisible anymore. Gratefully, David S. I read the letter 3 times before setting it down. David. Another life almost ruined. Another path that nearly mirrored ours. But not this time. I slid the letter into a drawer, next to the compact Elise left behind, the only piece of her I didn't throw away. Not out of sentiment. Out of reminder. Some people collect trophies. I collect lessons. The holidays crept up fast. Jacob insisted we decorate the house. For the first time in years, he took the lead, climbing up to the attic, bringing down the old string lights, even dusting off Harold's train set. You think it still works? He asked. Only one way to find out, I said, handing him the extension cord. By evening, the whole living room glowed with soft amber light. The train circled the base of the tree slowly, wheels squeaking slightly on the old track. We sat together on the couch, sipping cider, watching it go round and round. I haven't felt like this since Dad, he said. Like we're whole again. We are whole, I said. Just different. Rachel came by for dinner the following week. She was kind, thoughtful, not flashy, brought homemade rolls in a paper-lined basket and asked if she could help set the table. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said with a warm smile. "You're not," I replied. "You're welcome here." She didn't try to impress. She just was. And that, more than anything, put me at ease. After dinner, as Jacob walked her to her car, I peeked through the window. Not spying. Just curious. They stood under the porch light for a long moment talking, laughing. She touched his arm once, then leaned in for a soft hug. I watched Jacob's face as he came back inside. It was peace. That was all I needed to see. A few days later, I finally tackled the last big task, canceling the mortgage I'd taken out to fund the wedding. I sat in the office of Mr. Whitman, our family's banker, holding the final statement in hand. "It's not all gone," he said kindly, "but it's close." I nodded. I knew that when I signed the papers. He slid a folder across the desk. "You can pay off the remainder slowly. No rush. But if you ever want to refinance, we can talk options." I appreciate that. I left the bank lighter even with the financial weight, because now I knew exactly what I had bought. Not a wedding. Not flowers or dresses or chairs. I had bought clarity, protection, and time. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. That evening I found Jacob in the kitchen, writing something at the table. He looked up when I entered. "Hey, what are you working on?" He hesitated, then slid the notebook toward me. I recognized the cover immediately. It was one of Harold's old journals. Jacob used to write in them as a boy short stories, poems, memories. I flipped to the first page. Things I forgot to say. I looked up. He shrugged. "It's not for anyone. Just for me. Do you want to read one to me?" He nodded, flipping to a fresh entry. "I forgot to say thank you. For the house, the meals, the late-night rides. For never asking me to be more than I was. For watching me fall, and then waiting quietly until I stood up. For always knowing the truth, and giving me the space to find it myself." His voice wavered on that last line. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I heard every word," I said. And I had. Winter settled in quietly that year. The snow arrived late in December, blanketing the streets of Westbridge with a softness that hushed everything beneath it. I stood at the kitchen window watching the flakes swirl past the porch light, wrapped in the same shawl I'd worn the night Elise told me I wasn't welcome. How far we'd come. Jacob was humming in the other room, hanging a new photo frame above the mantel. It was a candid shot from Thanksgiving, Rachel laughing at something I'd said, Jacob mid-smile, and me holding the carving knife with mock seriousness. It wasn't posed. It wasn't polished. But it was real. And real was more than enough. On Christmas Eve, Rachel brought over a small gift box wrapped in blue paper. "It's nothing fancy," she said. "Just something I thought might mean something." Inside was a vintage fountain pen. "I saw it at an antique shop last month," she explained. The tag said, "For those who still write their own endings." I immediately thought of you. I didn't speak for a moment. Then I smiled. "It's perfect." That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I took out a fresh notebook and uncapped the pen. Its weight felt right in my hand. Firm. Balanced. I wrote a single sentence. "This is not the story I planned, but it's the one I'm proud of." By the time spring returned, Jacob had sold the apartment he once shared with Elise. He put a down payment on a small craftsman home not far from mine. Just enough space. Just enough light. Rachel helped pick out the paint colors. One afternoon I helped him unpack. We stood in his new kitchen surrounded by boxes when he opened the drawer labeled keepsakes. He pulled out something wrapped in tissue. Carefully he unwrapped it and held it up. The wedding spoon. One of the silver ones I'd ordered for the wedding favors. Only this one had made it home. It still bore the initials J&E. He looked at me. "Should I throw it away?" I shook my head. "Keep it." "Why?" "Because even the broken chapters belong in the book. They teach you where not to go again." He smiled. "I'm keeping you two. Just so you know." "Good," I said. "I'm the part that doesn't get lost." In May I hosted a small dinner. Nothing elaborate. Just family, a few friends, and one seat left open for whatever might come next. Rachel brought lemon pie. Jacob brought a bottle of red. At the end of the meal, as everyone lingered at the table, full and warm, Jacob stood up and tapped his glass. I know this isn't a holiday or anything, he said, but I want to say something. We all turned to him. I don't know where I'd be if things hadn't happened the way they did. And I don't like thinking about it. But I do know this, I'm grateful. Not for the lie, but for the truth that followed it. I'm grateful for the person who didn't give up on me, even when I stopped listening, and for the second chance to start again. Stronger, smarter, and still surrounded by love. His voice caught for just a second. Then he raised his glass toward me. To my mom, who taught me how to see clearly again. They all lifted their glasses. I didn't cry. Not then. I smiled, nodded, and raised mine too. To new stories, I said. The kind we write with both hands and no regrets. That night, alone in my room, I placed the pen Rachel had given me back in its box. On the shelf beside it sat the compact Elise left behind. Dull now. Useless. But I didn't throw it away. Not because I needed it, but because it reminded me what happens when you forget your worth. I turned off the light and slipped under the quilt I'd sewn with my own hands decades ago. The one Jacob used to drag into the living room during thunderstorms. And just before sleep found me, I whispered the last thing I'd ever say about Elise Warner. She thought I was just the mother of the groom. But I was the architect. And she never saw it coming.